Jurickson Profar avoided major injury this weekend and should be available for opening day. Huge news for the Braves. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, March 10th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And I want to talk about injuries today, right? We're going to cover the Profar situation. We're also going to talk about the rotation battle for those last two spots and how injuries around baseball could mean that you could take advantage of a guy who's maybe not going to win one of those rotation spots, but could still be an MLB contributor in a trade. But first, let's get to Profar. So for those of you who missed our live show on Saturday that we did reacting and talking about what we know as of now, Jurickson Profar was playing the outfield against the Pittsburgh Pirates, playing left field. And for some reason, maybe it was the fact that AA talked about him improving a little bit on defense in the press conference, but for some reason, he's out there diving for balls, okay? He's out there diving for baseballs. And the second time he does that in the game, he comes up lame holding his left wrist, right? Throws immediately flings the glove off and is holding his wrist. Braves trainer George Poulis comes out there, checks on him, right there on the field, looking at his wrist, his elbow, his shoulder, the whole thing. They walk him off the field. And honestly, it does not look good, right? Both his initial reaction and the way that he's walking off the field, right? He's not moving the hand at all, just keeping it completely still. Sometimes he's holding it, sometimes he's not, but the hand is stuck in this position, is not moving at all. It's hanging down, you can't see on the screen if I hang it down. But the point is, he's not moving his fingers, he's not wiggling anything. Doesn't look great. Initial x-rays done on Saturday are negative. So they do not, in the initial x-ray, do not detect a fracture. So it's not obviously and clearly broken. Now, just because an x-ray is not always conclusive, okay? Yeah, I remember 2023, Orlando Arcia's initial microfracture of the wrist did not show up on the first x-ray. I think they were on the road when it happened, and when they got home and went to a better quality facility and did additional scans, they then saw it, and he missed a couple weeks. Jurickson Profar flies back to Atlanta, okay? He flies back to Atlanta, he gets a CT scan, and when he is getting that CT scan, he gets that Sunday morning, he flies back, and we're initially told on Sunday morning by manager Brian Snitker that the team's not going to have an update until probably Monday, right? They have to get somebody to, they didn't explain all of this, but they have to get a doctor available to read the CT scan and tell you what's going on. Like an hour and a half later, we get updates from the beat who are there in Northport, Mark Bowman, and then Ken Segura of the AJC, former Georgia Tech beat writer, sports columnist, filling in for Justin Toscano, who was back home. He updates that, okay, actually, the CT scan revealed a bone bruise in the wrist. Okay. It is painful. It hurts, right? A bone bruise is a painful injury. But it's not something that should linger through opening day. Jurickson Profar is expected to be available on opening day. And the unspoken part of that I think we're all, that is understood, but was not explicitly relayed by Mark Bowman or Ken Segura, is that the CT scan, one, did not see any sort of other signs that a bone had been broken, but also did not come up with any muscle or ligament damage, right? The official diagnosis, again, on Saturday was a jammed wrist. And then the CT scan updated to a bone bruise. But there's no torn ligaments. There's nothing like that would necessitate surgery or keeping him out for a very long time. Jurickson Profar, they have, as of time of recording, they just announced the lineup for Monday's spring training game. Jurickson Profar obviously is not in there. He probably would not have played the rest of this week. He probably will not play much at all before opening day. I would expect the goal here for Jurickson Profar, and again, this is all speculation, I would assume the goal for Jurickson Profar is going to be entering the lineup sometime around the 23rd or 24th. The 23rd is the final home matchup in spring training for Atlanta against the Orioles. It's a Sunday. And then after that game, the Braves are loading up on a plane and flying to Arizona. They close their spring training schedule with 2 matchups against the Cubs on the 24th and 25th before the season opener on the 27th. Again, this is all speculation. They haven't told us any sort of timelines here, but my guess, my estimation would be he's probably shut down for a week. You're probably trying to get him a little bit of cage work next week, later next week, right? You have an off day on the 18th. Maybe you reevaluate him on the morning of the 19th, which is an away game against the Yankees. And then you get him some cage work with the goal of getting him back in the lineup for 1 to 3 games before the away opener, which is the 27th in San Diego against the Padres. So that's my guess as to how they're going to approach this, right? Again, the goal would be to get him some cage work, get him a couple games live based on what they've said, based on what we know of the scan and everything. As of now, I would not expect him to start the season on the injured list. And so he's not really going to significantly impact the roster decisions, okay? You do have there is a little bit of maybe they're more inclined to keep another outfielder because of this. I do think you're in a situation where if Profar is not responding to treatment or is not feeling as good as he needs to for opening day, maybe that's something where he does go on the short-term IL to open the year and a guy like a Jake Marisnick makes the roster. But for the most part, it still feels like your plan is going to be Profar and left every day. The combination of Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz in right, and Eli White making the roster as your utility man who can play a bunch of outfield. He is playing outfield on Monday for the spring training matchup. So it's entirely possible that's a situation that you are in for opening day. But either way, a bone bruise typically doesn't linger all season. This isn't something that should impact Jurickson Profar all year. And I do think that's really good because there are injuries all across baseball, including a bunch of guys that are going to be impacted into the regular season. And I do think that Atlanta's battle for the final rotation spots can potentially end up influencing some of those other teams with their rotation injuries. We'll get to all of that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about Jurickson Profar avoiding injury and what happens to the rotation and other injuries around baseball. The rotation battle going into the year was seen as being, in essence, a 4-man battle, right? Snit told us at the winter meetings the goal was to bring 7 starters in spring. They want to have 7 starters stretched out and ready to go by the end of spring, which is a typical normal amount, right? Spencer Strider obviously is not going to join the rotation for a little while after the season starts, but Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, Pitcher Schwellenbach are all locked in. Your other 4 spots, Grant Holmes, Ian Anderson, AJ Smith-Shawver, and Bryce Elder. I'm going to go on a limb, and based on his performances, based on how the team has treated him, I'm going to go on a limb and say Grant Holmes is locked into one of these 2 spots. As much as he is probably the one of all 4 of these guys who could go to the bullpen and be successful, because that's how he came up last year, I would say Grant Holmes is locked into this rotation spot. 5 innings pitched so far in spring, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks to 4 strikeouts. Again, only 2 starts in spring. He pitched on Wednesday 4 innings in an inner squad on the backfields. This is something last Wednesday the team was off. It was an off day. And instead of just giving some guys the complete day off to keep him on time with the starting schedule, they had him throw 4 innings on one of the backfields. Other side note here on Grant Holmes, the kick change that he's now throwing in spring. We talked about this a week or 2 ago. I held a ball up on the screen for those of you on YouTube and talked about it. That was actually, he started throwing that last August. He didn't use it in the game last year, but that was suggested to him by the team, and he started throwing that last August, and now it's at the point where he wants to use it in a game. So I feel good about that. He talked a lot about, I believe this was in Behind the Braves from last Wednesday. He talked about just trying to be comfortable with his pitches when he used them, things like that. But the other 3 guys in this battle, there's pros and cons on each, and I think I know which direction they're going to go, but we're going to talk about it anyway. It's Ian Anderson, AJ Smith-Shawver, and Bryce Elder. And I have these guys in that order, okay? Ian Anderson, we've talked about this before, he's out of options, right? And so it makes a lot of sense that obviously you need to either trade him or put him on the team, all right? They're not going to just DFA him. They're not going to try to get him through waivers. Somebody will claim him. He would be lost for virtually nothing. So they would either do a trade for him or they would stick him in the bullpen. But when you dig into what he's done, I feel really good about his ability to maybe be more effective than people are expecting. Okay? So he's thrown 8 innings this year, 2 hits and 1 run. But he's allowed 9 walks and he's hit a batter. So 12 base runners in 8 innings. To only allow 1 run off of that is pretty impressive. He has 5 strikeouts. And I think the assumption here is, and this is not intel from the team, this is all speculation, but I'm assuming the approach here is this is a small sample size on the walks. He's gone through some tough situations. I want to say it was last Friday, maybe. It was like 45 or 50 degrees. Everybody had reduced velocity, had trouble commanding their stuff, etc. So I really feel like they're assuming that he's going to be a little more under control when the season gets here and it's warm and it's back to normal conditions. Now, his career walk rate's never been great. He's at 10.4% for his career. His 3 seasons in the majors, 10.1, 9.9, and 11. I thought it was 11.09, 11.0. I can't read my own writing. 11.0. But 9 walks in 8 innings, I don't think is a pace you're going to continue to see. I think some of that is still ramping up in spring, still trying to get... He talked about that first outing. He had a little bit of the nervousness just being on the mound again. I legitimately do think that based on how he's performed, assuming that the walks come back to a normal amount for him, which is somewhere around 10%, that he's going to be your 5th starter on opening day. And so where does that leave AJ Smith-Shawver and Bryce Elder? AJ Smith-Shawver, to me, has looked really good in spring. He's had his moments where he struggled a little bit. I feel like every young pitcher does that. Think about Spencer Schwellenbach, his first 5 starts last year, how he struggled, and after that, his ERA was like 2.5 the rest of the year. Smith-Shawver, 8 innings pitched, 9 hits, 4 runs, 3 of those were earned, 3 walks to 10 strikeouts. I do think I did check some of the game logs on this. Of those 9 hits, 7 of them were singles. He gave up 2 doubles against Boston in his most recent outing. That was on Sunday. And both of them were early. It was Alex Bregman and Trevor Story. Okay, yeah, you understand why those guys would hit doubles. Against Alex Bregman and Trevor Story, after those doubles, he pitched 3 innings, no hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. And to me, AJ Smith-Shawver is the guy who I think could most have a Spencer Schwellenbach type of leap this season if he gets the opportunity. I'm not saying he's going to be Spencer Schwellenbach because that's not normal. I think there's a subset of Braves fans, and most of you who listened and watched the show are not these people. Thank you. There's a subset of Braves fans that saw the success Spencer Strider had early and the success that Spencer Schwellenbach had early. And they think that's how it's always supposed to work. And those two guys are special. One, they have the SS thing going on. AJ Smith-Shawver should probably change his first name to Spencer if he wants to have that kind of season. But Smith-Shawver is the type of player. The stuff is really good. The changeup has become a fantastic weapon. There's good velocity on the fastball. I do feel like if he had the opportunity, you would probably see him be in that back end situation like Schwellenbach, where he would struggle here and there at certain points, and then a switch would flip. And from that point on, he could stick in the rotation all year. The reason I have Bryce Elder third is because he's stuck in the rotation all year in 2023. And that switch not only didn't flip, it turned off. He had that great first half of the year in 23, made the All-Star game, got blown up right before the All-Star break by the Rays, and then got blown up right after the All-Star break and just never really recovered, including last year. Right now, 9 2/3 innings for Bryce Elder, 13 hits, 7 runs, 5 walks to 9 strikeouts. He's given up 2 home runs. They were back-to-back on Sunday against Boston. I believe he took the loss in that game, actually. And so we are in a situation now where he is, to me, clearly the 7th option out of 7. The Atlanta Braves are not going to DFA Bryce Elder. Fans want to just yeet this dude into the sun, and I think you need to understand that is not going to happen. Guys who physically can pitch 170 innings in a season are inherently valuable. Now, if he pitched a full season with an ERA of 6.5, would he be as valuable? No. But there is inherent value in Bryce Elder and what he does. And if an organization thinks that they can improve him and or fix him, or just values having a guy they can run out there every 5th day, then you're in a situation where perhaps they would want to go grab a guy in Bryce Elder who still has 2 minor league options and is only 25 years old. He turns 26 this season. So in just a minute, let's talk about some of the injuries around MLB and who could potentially reach out to Atlanta and attempt to make an acquisition. Again, I don't know if they'd move Bryce Elder, but here's some significant injuries to contenders around baseball. We'll get to that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today for Monday, March 10th, talking about injuries, right? A lot of injuries here, whether it's Jurickson Profar dodging a bullet on a larger injury with a bone bruise, Ian Anderson coming back from injury to try to make the rotation, or some of the injuries around Major League Baseball. And again, I don't know if Atlanta would actually move Bryce Elder. I feel the need to clarify that. A lot of people want him just launched into the sun, and I don't quite think that's not going to happen. But I don't know if a team would reach out to Atlanta to try to acquire him or not, because he can give you innings, right? Bryce Elder can give you innings. It's just the open question is, how good are those innings? But there are teams that need to find innings. The New York Yankees, for example, they were already without Rookie of the Year Luis Gil. He has a lat strain, a pretty severe lat strain. He's going to be shut down for 6 weeks and then begin a spring training type throwing program. So probably a full month of rehab. One of his teammates, I'm trying to remember who it was, maybe it was Clark Schmidt, had this injury last year and missed almost the entire season. They might be without Clark Schmidt. Without Luis Gil for a good portion of the season. News also came out on Sunday that Garrett Cole, the staff ace and a former AL Cy Young winner from 2023, is being recommended for Tommy John surgery. The Yankees are getting additional opinions. They are second and third opinions on this. But if he has Tommy John surgery, he's going to be out for all of 2025 and some of 2026, even if he gets the internal brace. Odds are Garrett Cole misses some time in 2026 as well, especially if the ligament is damaged and he needs to have the ligament repaired. It would be a Tommy John with an internal brace. He would probably miss a good portion, probably half of 26 as well. And because of those two injuries, the Yankees went from not knowing if Marcus Stroman would make the rotation or not to Marcus Stroman's their number 3. The staff ace is now Max Fried, former Braves starter Max Fried. Carlos Rodon, number 2. Marcus Stroman, number 3. And both Clark Schmidt and Will Warren, some of their top prospects. Schmidt's not a prospect anymore. I'm sorry. Schmidt and Warren. Warren is one of their top pitching prospects as their 4 and their 5. The issue here for the Yankees, they have minor leaguers. Chase Hampton's the one who's out, injured right now. They have Carlos Carrasco in camp as a non-roster invitee, 38 years old, trying to make it back to the majors. They grabbed Alan Winans from the Braves off of waivers when Atlanta DFA'd him. They have a couple Rule 5 guys, Sean Boyle, Eric Leal, whatever. But there's not a lot of depth remaining for the New York Yankees in the rotation. They've made a lot of trades in the last couple years where they sent out pitching prospects, right? Michael King ended up being really good for the Padres. They've moved a lot of arms. And because of that, now they're in a situation where they need depth. One more injury, and they are starting Alan Winans every 5th day. Atlanta has seen that doesn't always work out more than once, right? He was great against the Mets the first time he faced them. Again, the Mets were the organization that drafted him and let him get taken in the minor league Rule 5 draft by Atlanta. The Mets crushed him the second time, right? He's throwing 89. His fastball is 89, 90 miles an hour. It's so hard to survive at the major league level with an 89 mile an hour fastball. It just is. The Yankees could potentially need pitching. I don't think Atlanta would want to move Ian Anderson. The conversation would probably need to be had. I'm sure there would be a conversation about it, simply because, again, he has no options and he has never pitched in the bullpen in his professional career. Never. Do you move him make him the long man in the 6th starter in the pen, or do you potentially move him? Bryce Elder, another guy who could potentially get moved. Again, I don't know if Atlanta's going to move any of these guys, but the Yankees clearly would need pitching. Do you take advantage of that opportunity to try and go get someone from one of these teams? You're not going to go get Braden Shoemake back. They have Braden Shoemake. They grabbed him after the Royals waived him, who grabbed him after the White Sox waived him. But do you go try to get an outfielder, an infielder? Do you try to grab a reliever? Do you try to get somebody? Do you maybe try to get Tyler Matzik back? Who, by the way, I think he has an oblique strain right now, but Matzik signed with the Yankees. Is it possible that the Yankees reach out about one of these guys? Maybe. The Mets, by the way, not a pitching. They're already dealing with pitching injuries, right? Sean Manaea is out. So is Frankie Montas. But they had an injury to their own catcher, Francisco Alvarez. Broken hamate bone in his hand, taking live BP over the weekend. He's going to have surgery. He's expected to be out for 8 weeks. They did say on Sunday, manager Carlos Mendoza said, it should be the full 8 weeks, right? Catchers use their hand so much. It's his left hand, so it's his glove hand. You really can't rush a guy back from a broken bone in his glove hand when he's a catcher, right? He's got to use that Second straight year, he's had a left hand injury. He tore a ligament in his thumb last year, hurt his power production all season, even when he came back. They're looking at outside catchers. Again, we talked about this last week. I don't think the Braves are going to go out and sign a James McCann or a Yasmani Grandal. I don't see it happening for Atlanta. They have enough options here. They have a high-quality backup in Drake Baldwin. But, right, so Drake Baldwin was a third-round pick in 2022. Pick number 11 overall in 2022 by the Mets was catcher Kevin Parada out of Georgia Tech. Here you can see where a good drafting organization can help you and a bad draft pick can hurt you. The Braves are not going out and signing a veteran catcher because Drake Baldwin looks very promising and is probably going to be the opening day catcher, right? You have Sandy Leon, Kurt Casale in camp as veterans along with Chadwick Trump. The Mets, Kevin Parada, not only is not even being discussed for the majors, I don't even know if he was an NRI to spring training this year. I don't think they did bring him in. They've already sent him back. He's not on the MLB pipeline top 30 prospects list for the Mets. So they're looking at James McCann and Yasmani Grandal. The good news is they know both those guys. McCann used to play for them before they traded him to the Orioles, and Yasmani Grandal was with Milwaukee for a little while David Stearns was running baseball operations in Milwaukee. But here you can see where being an organization that's good at drafting and developing can help you in free agency and when injuries strike. And I do feel like Atlanta's in a situation where at most positions, if they have an injury, they have a guy they can bring up to either from the minor leagues to play the position or an NRI that they brought in for cheap. If Matt Olson goes down for a couple weeks, Garrett Cooper can step in and play first base. He's not the same caliber of player, but he can do it, right? Catcher. Sean Murphy goes down for a couple weeks. You've got Drake Baldwin. You've got these veterans. The Mets, by comparison, are having to go out and get somebody. Speaking of first base injuries, Christian Walker of the Astros has an oblique injury. Second straight year he's had one. It sucks for them. The Orioles are another team that have a former Braves pitcher on staff in Charlie Morton and are missing a pitcher. Grayson Rodriguez, their young potential ace. I've always liked Grayson Rodriguez. I think he could be a very good pitcher. He has been shut down for 7 to 10 days with elbow inflammation. They gave him a cortisone shot. They said they don't see any sort of ligament damage or anything. They're going to shut him down, let the shot work, and then start a throwing program up. I don't think he'll be out long enough to approach Atlanta about making a deal, but I'm sure Charlie Morton can give them a lot of insight into who Bryce Elder is as a pitcher. It's not just over here. George Kirby of the Seattle Mariners is being shut down with a shoulder issue. They're going to keep him shut down for, I think it's like a week or two. While they let the inflammation subside, they said there's no structural damage there, and then they'll start a throwing program with him. They have such a great rotation. I don't see them reaching out to Atlanta for a trade, but just, it's not like, it feels like Atlanta has really been whacked by injuries, right? Because Sean Murphy, Profar now, but I do think it's important for us to keep the alternative in mind, how much worse it could be. The Yankees right now, it almost feels like they inherited Atlanta's injury luck, right? Giancarlo Stanton's going to start the year on the IL. He is facing potentially needing season-ending surgery on both of his elbows, some sort of elbow tendonitis. DJ LeMahieu, who was in the running for their third base spot, has a strained calf. Again, they've got both Garrett Cole and Luis Gil on the IL, as well as depth starter JT Brubaker with fractured ribs. And they've got 3 different relievers unavailable. Jake Cousins has a strained forearm. Scott Efros has like a grade 2 strain of his hamstring. And then Jonathan Loaizaga is still out after having an internal brace surgery on his throwing elbow. It could be worse for Atlanta. And relatively speaking, this is a pretty healthy team. Knock on every single bit of wood in my office right now. You avoided serious injury, Jurickson Profar. Sean Murphy, you avoided serious injury. He should be back a couple weeks into the season. You're also, barring a setback, going to get both Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr. back. This team, again, knock on wood, could be close to fully healthy a month and a half into the season. And we've seen Alex Anthopoulos has done a great job of grabbing depth to fill in a lot of these positions. Just about every position. If there's an injury, you know who can fill in, at least on a short-term basis. Whether it's Garrett Cooper, whether it's Nacho Alvarez, whether it's Nick Allen. You've got a couple outfield options, whether it's Carlos Rodriguez, Eli White, like whatever it might be. And I don't feel like a lot of baseball can say that and have confidence that they have every single position covered. You don't have any position battles. You know, for the most part, who all of your offensive starters are. You know pretty well who's going to be your starting five when you break spring. Atlanta, relatively speaking, is in a pretty good spot, and I think we always need to remember that. This has been Braves Today for Monday, March 10th. You're listening on audio. Do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode, and maybe also leave a 5-star review. I love those things. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.